Hello, dear friends. My name is Clive Thompson. It's Saturday, 3rd January 2026. I would like to say Happy New Year to you, but I'm here in Crom, Montana, in Switzerland. It's not a Happy New Year. We've just had the greatest disaster ever on New Year's Eve, or 1st of January morning at 1:30 in the morning. I'm going to tell you a full report about what happened. First of all, Cron, Montana, spelled Cransmontana, is a mountain village in Switzerland in the canton of Valais. It's overlooking the Rhone Valley and it's in the Swiss Alps. It's a ski resort, and the population here officially is 10,500 people, but the number of permanent residents is probably around 7,000 because many people don't live here year round. They have a secondary residence here and a main residence somewhere else. However, in the peak tourist season, such as now, the population could expand to 50,000 people, including the visitors. Crom, Montana is about 1,500 feet above sea level, which means that in the wintertime it will be cold. And if it's snowed, there'll be a lot of snow on the ground. So outside, as I'm speaking, the temperature is about -5. Throughout the night, it was about -7 degrees. And for those who want to ski, they'd be going up to the ski resort a little bit higher up at 1,900 meters. Access to Crun, Montana is either by the mountain road, which takes 25 minutes, or by train. You'd take a train to Sierre or Sion, and from there you'd take the funicular up the mountain, or you'd take a bus. Crom, Montana has its own police and fire service. It's kind of combined into one. And of course, they have medical staff here in Crom, Montana, because there's inevitably going to be skiing accidents all the time. The place where the fire occurred, which killed so many people, is called Le Constellation. Um, People know it as the Constellation Bar. But in fact, it's a building of around 6 or 7, I think it's 7 floors, but only 2 of them are commercial, with the lower floor being the discotheque and the upper floor being the ground floor being the bar. They call that the terrace too, I think. The remaining floors are all residential flats, and those residential flats are, broadly speaking, occupied by tourists. Downstairs in the disco, there's only one entrance into the disco. That's by a fairly narrow staircase. The stairs are said to be uneven, um, and that's the only way in or out of the discotheque downstairs. As far as Crans-Montana is concerned, the nearest hospital is about 15 to 25 minutes away by ambulance. That's the Sierre Hospital, and there's also the Sion Hospital, 30 to 40 minutes away. The Constellation Bar, the discotheque downstairs, has a capacity of 300 people downstairs and 40 people on the terrace. We don't know how many people were in the bar at the time things went wrong. And I don't think we can ever know that. Some reports say it was crowded. Well, reports do say it's crowded. Some people were guessing that there were 200 people in. Capacity was 300. So there are other reports saying maybe there were 300 people in there. But there would have been people coming and going all night. So people leave, people come in. So it's probably impossible to ever know exactly how many people were in there at the time that it caught fire. So what happened? Revelers, New Year revelers, at 1:30 in the morning were dancing and singing, and there was a DJ playing music. And according to at least 3 witness reports, there was a waitress on the shoulders of a waiter carrying uh, champagne bottles with sparklers. Now I've seen the video of this. They look like quite large sparklers, a bit larger than the sort of I would put on a birthday cake, because the flames were leaping up. Looks like they're leaping 10 to 15 centimeters into the air. But according to the witnesses, those champagne bottles with the sparklers on top were being carried close to the ceiling. The ceiling is a very low ceiling, they said, and the ceiling caught fire. Now, the ceiling is made of soundproofing material, a kind of polished polyurethane, which covers the wooden ceiling. So those sparklers would have ignited the polyurethane, and some of the revelers tried to beat out the flames. We see that on the videos, while other revelers continued to uh, dance to the music, not realizing what, well, they'd obviously seen it, but they thought it was some sort of joke. And plenty of the revelers pulled out their telephones and started to film the fire. With hindsight, the right thing to have done would have been to run as fast as you can, because that those flames on the ceiling spread very, very quickly with thick, acrid smoke, hot smoke, and then at one moment we had what's called a flashover. Um, some people said that would have taken about 10 seconds from the start of the fire. It looks like it was probably a bit longer than that when I look at the video, but certainly within a minute to 90 seconds, the whole area would have been alight. So what probably happened is the flames were on the roof. You had thick smoke on the roof. You had the fire on the roof was the ceiling, not the roof. The ceiling was spreading very quickly above the revelers' heads, and people were running for the exit. Um, and then as the door upstairs, which is at the top of the stairs of the Constellation bar, was opened, there was a rush of air, and the flames rushed up the stairs, the smoke rushed up the stairs, the hot, acrid smoke rushed up the stairs, and people were obviously now at this point all running for the stairs. If they could see it, there would have been plenty who wouldn't have been able to find their way in the smoke, but people were running for the stairs, and they were falling over each other and climbing over each other. And then probably at the bottom, we don't know now, but probably at the bottom of the stairs, there was a pile up of bodies blocking people from getting any further. And certainly at the top, we can see on the videos, it looks like there was even people trying to get out of the exit at the top of the stairs. It looks like the bodies were piling up there, and that was blocking people from getting any further. And as this was going on, those who were still inside the building would have been breathing very, very hot smoke into their lungs, destroying their lungs and their throat. Um, so those were many of those who were coming out um, were naked. They literally their clothes, hair had been burned off, their clothes had been burned off. There are some very horrific stories. So if you want to stop watching now, I think you can stop watching now, because I'm going to tell you one or two witness accounts. There were several people who said they saw people with their faces completely blackened. Couple of one boy and one girl, different stories in different languages, talked about somebody whose face seemed to be ripped off. Another one talked about eyelids being burned off or ripped off. Um, but we see one girl climbing out of a window, and she appears, her whole body, at the top of her body is red. She looks like she'd probably be okay, but she's certainly been very, very badly burned. Um, a fire expert said, and I quote here, he said, once flashover occurs, flashover is when the smoke at the top ignites suddenly, like a bang. He says, once flashover occurs, survival in the basement was highly improbable. And they're talking about a period of 10 seconds or so before, after the fire had ignited, for that to happen. So literally, there was almost no time to get out. And within seconds after the fire started, the whole of the basement was filled with hot smoke, and that smoke spread almost instantaneously to the ground floor, the terrace, and people were trying to get out of the terrace as well on the next floor up. Um, those who did find their way up the stairs and to get out were screaming in pain and clambering over one another to get out. Many of them would have been trampled, and there are stories of broken bones. Um, when the fire started at 1:30 in the morning on the 1st of January, um, the the first call came in to the police and the fire almost immediately, and they say by they say 1:31 the calls were coming in, and by 1:32 the first responders were on site. But of course, um, others started to arrive in the minutes and hours which followed. Um, Ron Montana does have its own ambulances because people do get injured on the ski slopes, but of course there would have been ambulances coming from the nearest hospitals in places like Sierre and Sion and other places. Um, all in all, there were 140 to 150 emergency staff, including medical and police, who attended. 40 to 42 ambulances arrived on scene over the time, and 10 to 13 helicopters were there, also transporting victims to hospitals such as Sion, into Italy, into France, and Lausanne and Geneva, for example, because the local or the nearest burns unit in the hospitals would have been quickly overwhelmed. They aren't equipped to handle hundreds of burned people. Many of the people who were trying to escape collapsed due to inhalation of hot smoke and burns. Um, and witnesses said they saw people dying, literally dying on the street. They saw blackened bodies, naked, hair and clothes completely burned off, skin bright red or black. Um, the people who are witnesses and have been on social media and TV stations say the bar was crowded. Um, if there were 200 people in the bar, we've got basically at this moment in time 47 confirmed dead. At least that's what the media is saying. I think the authorities have said 40 so far, but other reports are saying 47 confirmed dead. And they're also saying that something like 115 people are being treated in hospital, most of them with very serious burns, and uh, most of them, many of them in critical condition. Critical condition means that it's imminently life-threatening, and immediate intensive care is needed. So it does seem probable that in the days, hours which follow, there will be more deaths. Uh, some of these people are perhaps beyond saving. A number of them are still in comas, in many cases, induced comas to ease the pain. So if there were 200 people in the bar, and we've got 115 odd who are in hospital and 47 odd dead, that's 160 something. So it does mean that out of 200 people, only 40 got out unharmed. If there were 300 people in the bar, it means only 140 got out unharmed out of the 300, less than half. Um, but according to all accounts, there was almost no survivable time from when the acoustic foam lit and flashed over, which was very, very short space of time. Once it had flashed over, there was little chance of survival who were those who weren't already climbing out of the exits. Um, so the ceiling it's kind of soundproofing ceiling. It's people say it's egg cup shaped to absorb the sound. It's made of polyurethane, and on the videos you see as the fire lights, there are people. Some people are trying to beat the fire out with clothing, but you see at the same time there's hot polyurethane drops of hot polyurethane burning, dropping down onto the people who are trying to put the flames out below. Meanwhile, people are still not, think it's all a big joke, and they're dancing and filming. Um, when they should have been they didn't know. There's no way they can know, but they should have run. It took only seconds for the fire to engulf the entire ground basement floor. But as the door was opened up at the top, flames and smoke rushed up the stairs towards the only exit, and that hampered those who were fighting to get out, and left more and more people trapped who were because they were piling up at the bottom and the top of the stairs. There's stories of there being a back door. Um, I, it, I think that must have been on the ground floor, but apparently that was locked. And it said that people were trying to get out of that door and were screaming to get out. Um, some of the first responders on the outside broke that door down and started pulling out people and pulling people and bodies out, I think. And that's a subject of part of the investigation. Um, what else can we say? I'm just quoting one witness. She said, we all ran out screaming, and when we looked back, there were flames. Most of the victims seem to be young people. Um, there's many stories about the age of the victims, but plenty of the people inside would have been aged 14 to 17, but there would have been people all the way up to their late 20s inside that bar, that disco. Um, Many of them who did get out will have suffered very serious airway burns requiring intubation, and that's a tube in your throat. Um, so officially, unofficially, I don't know whether it's official or unofficial now, 47 dead, 115 serious injured. Of those, 80 are in critical condition, meaning their lives are in immediate danger. Um, the number of ambulances which arrived over time was 42. That clearly was not enough to treat the 115 injured. So, in nearby premises, the firefighters and the medical workers were sorting the people out. What they call it triage. They were organising those who had to go in the ambulances first. But by dawn, dawn is about 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. All the injured had been taken away to hospitals. Many of the dead were burned beyond recognition, and there's a large job going on to try and identify uh, who these people are, where they're from. But there's very little. There's very little that can be found. You know, they're burnt, their faces are burned, their hands are burned. Um, Many of those who are injured, they say that they've got uh, burns over 60, more than 60% of their bodies. And the hospitals from Lausanne and Sion have quoted on this, have said that all of them have, apart from serious burns, also have serious smoke inhalation injuries, and that recovery is uncertain for certainly some. As far as firefighters are concerned, uh, they the first ones arrived within minutes, but it did take several hours to bring the fire under control. Of those who've survived, currently there are 6 in intensive care and are in comas, probably or probably induced comas. And 6 of them, those 6 have not yet been identified and can't be identified because they don't have any identification on them. I mean, their clothes were burned off. It's a terrible day for many, many people here in Crom, Montana. There's nobody who lives here who doesn't know somebody who was affected. There are families still trying to get information. They woke up in the morning, their children hadn't come home. They tried to call them, and then the messages started to flood in about the fire, and then they're panicking and they're trying down the children, and the children aren't answering because and they don't know what's happened. They don't know if they're in hospital. They don't know if they're dead. They don't know if they just lost their phone. Um, but everybody knows somebody who's affected in some way. And I've met a few people who potentially are affected. I mean, a few nights ago, I met a couple of families. They're Americans. Um, the children some of the children were 18 years old. They probably possibly would have been out celebrating. I don't know what happened to them. We met another family, family were they're friends of ours. The son said that he had been in the bar, the Constellation bar, at 10:30 drinking with his friends. They then went out to get something to eat, and they came back about half an hour before the fire started and wanted to get into the Constellation bar. This was a group of young lads. They were refused entry, so he was 18. I don't know the age of his friends. There's a girl who we know. She said that she doesn't know anybody who of her friends who isn't accounted for, but some of those friends know people who were in the bar and can't, and they're trying to reach them and can't reach their friends, and they don't know what's happened to them. But people are fearing the worst. For identification of the bodies, the authorities have said in some cases it's going to take a long, long time, weeks, maybe even some cases months, because they have to go try and identify people who have been burned by dental records, by DNA, by fingerprints. So many of the bodies literally can't be identified at this point. Um, the owner. Let's just talk a little bit about the owners of the bar and what might happen. So, first of all, the police say the procureur, the prosecutor, has said they've started a criminal investigation. The criminal investigation is looking into things like: has there been negligent homicide? Has there been negligent arson? Negligent bodily harm? They're looking into whether there have been breaches of the safety code. They're trying to find out if these sparklers, these fountain sparklers, these are the sparklers which spurt flames out of the top, uh, were they legally allowed? Now, obviously, you can buy in the supermarkets and things birthday sparklers, and it seems that these were most likely birthday sparklers, even if they looked bigger to me than the ones I've normally seen. These are people put them on birthday cakes in restaurants and homes often, but were they legally allowed in this particular place? That's another question. They're looking into what the ceiling materials were made of. They're looking at the fire rating of the soundproofing foam. Was it a cheaper type which is not fireproof, or was it the more expensive type which is fireproofed? They're looking at the occupancy versus the authorized occupancy. Well, I think they'll never get the answer to that one because you just can't know how many people are in the bar at the same time with people constantly going in and out. Um, they'll be looking at the number of exits and the usability of those exits. We kind of know the answer to that. There's only one of them. They'll be looking at whether there were fire extinguishers and whether there were alarms. As far as the owners of the building or the restaurant and the bar are concerned, um, it's owned by a company. The company is called Le Constellation, SARL. SARL so stands for Société à Responsabilité Limitée. In other words, limited liability company. It's a Swiss company. And the owners, according to the Register of Commerce, are a gentleman and his partner called Jessica Moretti, aged 40, and Jack Moretti, aged 49. Um, that they are they're French, but of Corsican origin, is what is said in the press. I haven't been able to verify that, of course. According to press reports, they own several venues in the region. They also own a place, apparently, this is what people are saying, called Le Vieux Chalet in Lens. I guess that's a restaurant, and another one called Le Senso in Cron, here in Cron, Montana. I don't know if that's a restaurant or a disco. The lady owner, if you like, Jessica Moretti, was in the bar at the time of the fire started, and is said to have been burned on her arm. We don't know how serious that is. Um, Jack, the husband, I guess he's a husband or partner, Moretti, he was in a different establishment on that night. Both of them have been questioned by the the police as part of the criminal investigation. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a terrible day. We've seen people in the street crying. I went down on the day it happened on the 1st of January at 8 o'clock in the morning to where it had happened, and most people were just waking up and unaware of anything. But then and I did a quick video then, but later in the day, there were people who were arriving to look for their relatives, and we saw their children or brothers or sisters weren't, or best friends weren't answering the telephone, and they couldn't find them, and they came down to see if they could find them anywhere, and you could see people's tears streaming down their face because they didn't know what had happened to their friends or relatives, and people still don't know because, as I said, of the survivors, some of them are still unidentified, and obviously there's 47 deceased, many of whom can't be identified because they're too badly burned. Obviously, they do know the identities of some of them, or some of the deceased, and that information is being communicated by the Swiss authorities to the uh, authorities of the various countries, the embassies of the various countries, so that they can provide all the support possible to the relatives and families of these people. Um, Switzerland has declared a few days of national mourning, and flags, the Swiss flag will be at half-mast. But it's a terrible day for Crans Montana, a terrible day for the people of Valais, the canton of Valais, and a terrible day for the people of Switzerland, and a terrible day for everybody around the world who knows someone who was here. Don't forget this bar. We have this huge number of tourists who've come for skiing for the winter, for the New Year, to celebrate, and there would have been people from all around the world in this bar, and we don't yet know the official numbers of people affected from different countries, but clearly it's a great worry for those who don't have news from their relatives. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Clive Thompson. Thank you very much for listening. And may my prayers and my go out to those who are suffering and have lost their loved ones, and also to those who still don't know what's happening to their loved ones.